What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Convo and Marlo. Today I have a special guest here with me today. Who do I have the pleasure of being here with?
Gene Principe from Sportsnet, host of the Edmonton Oilers games.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Before I dive into anything, I'd like to ask you, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. I'm on with you. I'm doing great.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As we spoke a little about what was it a few days ago, you're currently not in Edmonton. Where are you currently?
I'm currently on a road trip with the Edmonton Oilers. Started on the road away from home last night in Detroit, and then it's in Philadelphia where you and I are getting a chance to chat, and continues through to Montreal on Sunday, and the day before that in Ottawa, the nation's capital.
Wow. And how's that going?
It's going great. The team is playing fantastic. Connor McDavid is all world. Leon Draisaitl is pretty close to that. Team's winning. When you're winning, not only is the team having fun, but everybody around them is having fun as well.
Oh yeah, no, that's the type of thing I love to hear. But when the team's losing, what's the energy like then?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot different. There's no doubt about that. I think the one thing that I've seen that's changed over the decades that I've been covering it, I think in the old days, back in the 80s and 90s, players might carry the losses a little longer, and that would also include the coaches. It was almost like you lost, you get punished for it. And now I think there's an understanding that you lost, you deal with it that night, and then you really got to move forward. You can't look back.
Oh
You,
yeah,
you got to say, what's next? How do we solve the problems? We start looking for solutions because we know what the problem is. So I think that's one thing that's changed. You notice it on the buses and planes after games. There used to almost be like, well, you got to be quiet for, let's say, an hour and a half or
yeah,
something. And now, for sure, they're not happy, but I think that you got to kind of look at what's next as opposed to what's behind you.
exactly. Wow. So whenever the team feels, so basically what you're saying is when the team takes a loss, you yourself feel it. You feel it yourself. You feel as if like you're basically out there on the ice with them.
Well, I think that you can never replicate being on the ice like a player, but the fans of their respective teams, the Oilers in hockey, the Dallas Cowboys in football and soccer, maybe it's Manchester United, pick your squad. And when they lose, you lose with them.
Oh yeah.
I think sometimes fans, because they don't have a hand in the result, they can just sit and watch. Sometimes they take it or it lingers longer for them, where the players understand what didn't go right, how to fix it, and then it's on to the next challenge. But for sure, it's hard to be, smiley around a team that maybe got beaten, especially if they got beat badly.
Exactly. Wow. So now before first of all, I'm happy that you know what I'm saying. It seems like you're really getting into the conversation. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. So before we get more into the hockey stuff, I want to get to know who Mr. Gene Principe is. First of all, what is your background? Where are you from?
Well, I'm born and raised in Edmonton. That's where I grew up. 1967, I was born, February
Woo!
20th. So I'll be 56 here, right? Well, not very far away.
You look
Um,
25 to me.
Oh, thanks, buddy. Must be the cancer there, I think. I got some kind of effect on it or a shade. And I grew up in Edmonton loving sports. I played, in school, I played basketball and volleyball. Outside of school, I played hockey and soccer and played all kinds of sports, baseball, tennis, for fun. And really, when I was growing up and I was a young teenager, 14, 15, 13 in that area, I wanted to be a professional soccer player, to be honest with you. And
Wow.
I tried out for the Alberta under 16 team, and I didn't make it. I got cut. And I think that was at a young age, sort of like you might not make it as a professional soccer player. It didn't mean I quit, but I think what it meant was you better have another plan in your back pocket. So playing sports, watching sports, loving sports, I thought, well, if I can't play a pro sport, maybe I could cover. pro sports. So I
Mm.
would say middle to latter part of high school, that's where my attention sort of seriously turned. I went to NAIT, Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, a wonderful college in Edmonton, and graduated in 1987. And basically, here we are 36 years later, and I'm not only working but living the dream of being a
Wow.
sportscaster in his hometown.
I love that, man. So you've been doing it for that long. So you've seen the ups, the downs, the middle, everything.
There's nothing I haven't seen. I have really seen it all over the course of that amount of time, and I've been specifically hosting the Edmonton Oilers coming up at the start of next season. It'll be 25 seasons. So I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, um, and everything else. I've seen all the players. I think one of the neat things that happens, well, it's not so neat, but I guess it shows you longevity, is when I first started, I was the age of the players, some of them, and now I'm looking around going, I'm as the age of the parents, if not older than some of the parents. I think, what keeps you young is that there's always another 18 or 19-year-old around the corner that joins the team. So the guy who was 18 in 2015, like Connor McDavid, he's 26, but along comes Dylan Holloway, who's 20. And so you're always dealing with young people. And I think that helps just kind of keep your energy up. And listen, at the end of the day, you have a career where you watch sports and you talk about it. Who doesn't do that at home?
Exactly.
I don't know people who don't do that at home. I just happen to do it in front of a television camera.
Wow. So being a sports journalist, has that been your only job? Have you ever had another 9 to 5?
Well, I've had some jobs, growing up. When I was 14, 15, I started working at Klondike Days. I used to
Wow.
sell things and work those 10 days. And then I think I worked for one day at the Ice Peddler. And then I got left out in the cold, you might say. I didn't continue on there. From there, I worked at the Pop Shop for about 3 years, late high school into my time in college. But ever since I started my broadcasting career, which is mentioned, 36 years ago, that's all I've done. I worked one day at my uncle's painting company. I had a variety of jobs, but not too many in the sense of how long I did them, because I went to school at 18 and was in my career at 20.
Wow, no, that's lovely to hear. So throughout your time, I'm assuming you've gotten the chance to speak to Mr. Gretzky.
Oh, yes, I think that's one of the fabulous parts. People say, what's the best part of your job? And I think people is number one. And it's not just players, because you get a chance to cover, well, hundreds and hundreds of players, maybe into the thousands because of the time that I've been doing it. But it's the people. And of course, Wayne was a player, but before that, he was Wayne Gretzky, not necessarily the greatest hockey player of all time. And I mean, he's the great one in more ways than one. He is an unbelievable person. It's like, even sometimes I'm thinking, can he be that good of a guy? And I'm like, he can, And
Wow.
so to think of me back when Wayne and his teammates were winning Stanley Cups, and I was back then, they didn't go up and down White Avenue. They went up and down Jasper Avenue in Edmonton. And I remember celebrating those cups. And then fast forward, and you get to meet and spend time with Wayne Gretzky or Paul Coffey or Glenn Anderson, Grant Fuhrer, Mark Messier, Kevin Lowe, Bill Ranford, Andy Moog. Like, I mean, and I guess I'm name dropping, but I'm just trying to give you an idea what it's like for an Edmonton kid to have the opportunity that this Edmonton kid never thought he'd ever have.
Wow. Now that's extremely motivating, and especially with how long you've been doing this whole thing, is you for sure have motivated a lot of people. Have you had a lot of youngsters or maybe someone just a few years younger than you come up to you like, "Oh, I'm doing what I'm doing because of you," or "I am where I am because of you. I love the way you speak. I love your personality." Have you ever ran into that type of energy or love from someone else?
I have, people are amazingly kind,
Oh yeah.
and just with their feelings, their words about you, and maybe what you mean to them. Sometimes I lose track because you're on TV, and you forget sometimes that for years, decades, people will watch you over and over and over again, and you're sitting there in their living room, and they've had their supper, and they're eating their dessert, or they're maybe working on their homework, or they have a project that they've got on their laptop, and there you are. So it's such a compliment when people. I think one of the great lines when my kids were young, and people would say hi to me, and they'd be like, "How do you know that guy, Dad?" And I'd kind of say, "Well, I don't really know them." And the kids were so young, they didn't really know why. And then as they grew up, they kind of went, "Oh, well, they know him from TV." It's wonderful, wonderful when people say, "Oh, hi, Gene," and you talk to them, and then they go, "Oh, I feel like I know you." You
Wow.
know, that's great when someone feels like they know you and they've never even met you.
No, that's a nice. That's I know that's a nice feeling. As I was doing some research on you, I see that you've been called Prince of Punny. Where did that come from? How did that come about?
You know what? That started back. So the Oilers went to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final in 2006. And then they followed that up the next season, and they really had a very difficult season. And, I'm born and raised in Edmonton. And so for sure, I grew up an Oilers fan. But on TV, I play it down the middle. I know that when the Oilers win, the job feels more complete, more satisfying. But I don't have anything against the other teams. They're working just as hard and they're trying to succeed just like Edmonton is. So I found that they struggled a lot, and I always felt like you've come home from work, you've come home from school, maybe you've had a great day, but maybe you haven't. And you flip on the TV, and the last thing you want to hear is someone like me saying, "Oh, the Oilers have lost five in a row, and their power play is 0 for 26, and their goals against." Oiler fans, hockey fans, they know that already. So I always thought to myself, I go, how am I gonna make this positive? Let's find some positives, flush those out, and let's accent them to begin the show. You want people to stick around and watch. You don't want people to go, "Well, why would I watch that?" Click onto something else.
Exactly.
So it started, and then I started using some puns. I started using some different props, and away we went. So here we are, 16, 17 seasons years later, and I'm kind of doing the same thing. So it's been wonderful, kind of like the kid in class who won't stop talking. Sometimes I get, put in the corner and said, "Hey, okay, relax a little bit. Let's focus on the assignment here, which is the hockey game." So like, okay, no problem. So I refocus and I kind of get back into it. And I never want to take away the attention from the team. I understand that I'm there talking about the team because they're there.
Yeah.
If they're not there, I'm not there. But I just like to try and give an entertaining way to tell stories, to explain facts, to make people understand who the people are underneath the jerseys and the shoulder pads who wear the skates and carry the sticks.
Wow. No, I like that. I also saw this one video. It was also I think about maybe 6 7 years ago. There were police officers there with you, and you got arrested for excessive puns. was
Yeah.
that was that thought of the day of, or was that something planned, or did you see the police officers there and say, "I'd like for y'all to come on set with me"?
Well, what's funny is that actually was suggested by Kevin Lowe, Oiler great, six-time Stanley Cup winner, five times with Edmonton, one time with the New York Rangers.
Wow.
That night was committed to honoring the police and the duties and what they do. And so I'm like, "Oh, this is great." I'm thinking to myself, "Boy, I'd like to have fun with that." And I didn't say anything because I thought it's the police, right? So let's be serious about this. And then Kevin Lowe said, "Hey, have some fun with it, like do the stuff that you do." And I'm like, "Okay." I think, and they were fantastic. They bought in wonderfully, when it came to speed trap and tickets and radar gun on Connor McDavid, and they ended up taking me away, of course, to the penitentiary. So it was, what? I'm glad you brought that up. It was one of my most enjoyable openings because it involved other people, and in this case, the Edmonton Police Service. To me, that like I'm not saying it made everybody's night who's watching, but for me, I thought this is great. We're having fun with the police. The police are normally serious, involves criminal activity and sometimes unhappy endings. And
Yeah.
so I thought, what? We're taking something that people look at and wonder about, and we're making it a positive. And I think that's kind of what I try and do is, okay, here's the negative. How can we spin it? How can we make it something that puts a smile on people's faces, not takes the smile away.
Exactly. Man, when I was watching that, I saw that the cop that was putting the handcuffs on you, the handcuffs for whatever reason wasn't working. As I'm watching, I'm like, oh, come on, come on, come on. And then finally, after like the fifth try, finally got on.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that because we had kind of sometimes for the people involved, in this case, myself and the police, and also for our directors and producers, just to make sure that we kind of understand almost like a little scene. Here's what we're doing. We're going to put this here. We're going to go here. We're going to do that so that everybody's kind of at their best so we don't miss the shot. And when we did it during warm up, it was great. Now, we don't sort of do it full energy. We don't do it full because we don't want to repeat the same thing. We want it
Yeah.
to be natural and live, but we do want to walk through it sort of gently so that everybody understands their role. And when it's showtime, it goes off as well as it could. Unfortunately, the handcuff didn't play along for a while, but eventually he got it on me, and it was great. It was one of my, I would say, if not top three, for sure top five.
Oh yeah. What are some of your biggest accomplishments? You might have a few because you've been around for a while, but like if I was to ask you to give me two, what are the two that stand out and why?
Well, this might sound sappy, but I'm gonna start with being a dad and a husband and a son. I got three kids in their 20s, and being their dad is, well, as great as things could be. I've got a wife for over 25 years who
Wow.
never made me feel bad about being in California on the beach or in Florida or walking around New York or going out for dinner in Chicago. The career wouldn't have lasted as long and certainly wouldn't be as enjoyable if I didn't have that support at home. And, being a son and a native Edmontonian has been fantastic. Now, when you get to career wise, you know, I think a couple of things stand out. I think even though they did not win the Stanley Cup, 2006, when the Oilers made it all the way to Game 7, that was, it was incredible because of the fact that I watched all those Stanley Cups get won in Edmonton as an Oiler fan, some before I started my career, some as I was beginning my career. To have that opportunity to be so close, that's kind of a career highlight. And I think the 2004 World Series, there was a lockout in the National Hockey League. And I remember getting the call going, hey, do you want to cover the World Series? And I'm like, whoa, the World Series. I mean, this is, you're talking about something North America worldwide. And it was Boston taking on St. Louis. It was the curse of the Bambino. Babe Ruth had put a curse on the Boston Red Sox. They had not won the World Series since that happened. And
Wow.
I'd say, just kind of off the top of my head, those would be two of the greatest opportunities that a guy could ever have or want. And so they would be right at the top of my list when we're talking off the top of my head of a couple of things that I've had the opportunity to do that I've really been, blessed to have chances like that.
Nah, that's crazy. Cause I'd always assume being a dad is like always hair pulling. It's nothing but hair pulling moments. From what I've seen from outside looking in, but you're making it sound like it's a walk through the park.
Well, I don't want to sugarcoat it too much. My kids now, I mean, I remember the days where the worst thing was, people ask about best or worst part, of the job. Certainly travel is part of it. I remember when I was coming home when they were little and they would be running to the door. And now I'm lucky if they open the door to their room to just kind of put their head out to say, oh, you're home. So that's okay. I understand that. But I think that I'm at the point in my life career that it's about sort of passing the baton to the young broadcasters who are moving up. And I don't mean today, tomorrow, but in the next, half dozen years or so. And I also want to see my kids start to succeed. And I remember how proud my parents were of my ability to do what I wanted and to make a career out of it. And so now I want to see them try and be there to pick them up if they need it, or give them a kick in the backside if necessary, or I hope give them a nice pat on the back saying, "Well done."
Oh yeah. Um, I was at the gym yesterday, and as I was there, they have a TV up above the treadmill, and I couldn't really tell what it was because the quality of the TV is just not really up there. But I saw you in the commercial. I think it was with a little kid or something, like
Yeah,
something about a house. I couldn't
yeah.
really see because the color was faded, and I'm like, no way, this guy's everywhere. So what was that commercial?
Yeah, yeah, the big sisters, big brothers, dream home lottery, and when I was working in Lethbridge when I was 25, I didn't officially become a big brother because I was looking for a job, and I didn't want to start something and sort of build a relationship with a young guy as a big brother, and then suddenly go, oh, a month later I'm gone. I didn't feel right about that. But there was a lady who worked at our station, and she had a son who back then he was about 10. And I thought, this is a little more open because his mom knows and he knows that I could leave today, tomorrow, next month, next year. It was great. I mean, being a mentor to someone, helping change somebody's life uh, for the good, and just being around. It was really gratifying. And then to see him decades later be a dad himself, be successful, and be a great part of society, it was a lot of fun. So when I had a chance to be involved in a commercial like this with a couple of young kids, I thought, this is great. They were wonderful. Like they were really sharp, both the little boy and the little girl. And yeah, they asked if I wanted to be part of it. I said, count
Of
me in. I'd love
course.
to do
Okay.
it.
So now throwing ourselves into hockey now. Um, you you were around for the first Battle of Alberta. Back in, what was it, 92, 93? Or not the first,
Oh
but
yeah.
like the one where, and then obviously you was also here for the most recent one. What are some of the biggest difference that you've seen from what, 2 decades ago to today?
Well, yeah, I remember watching the Battle of Alberta when I was a kid. And, in fact, a little story when I was working in Lethbridge, and just a quick geography lesson. I'm sure most of your viewers and listeners know, but Lethbridge is a couple hours south of Calgary. So I was working down there, and it was late 1980s into the early 90s. And there was an opening in Calgary for a sportscaster, which is, it's a big job. You get to move to an NHL city, a CFL city, approximately a million people, maybe not back then, but certainly these days. And I'm like, I'm not applying for that. And people are like, well, why are you not applying for that? Because it's Calgary. I grew up in Edmonton. I mean, how can I go in Calgary? There's no way. It was just a sort of a built-in, let's say, dislike. But I've grown to like Calgary a lot ever since I kind of grew up and matured. And so I remember how vicious. And I think what would be the word I would use to describe the Battle of Alberta back then? Unpredictable,
Mm,
very unpredictable. You just did not know when something might happen, who would be involved, what would occur, when. It was kind of your edge of your seat viewing because anything could start something. Nowadays, it's not quite like that, but I've really enjoyed the fact that it's come back in the last couple of years and been very much closer to what it was back in the 80s and 90s. Listen, that was a different time, not only on the ice, but in the world. So it's hard to expect that that would continue 30, 40 years later. But I love the battles of Alberta. And I must say, going to Calgary last season, for the playoffs, I wasn't quite sure because two things could happen. No one would recognize me, or if you didn't recognize me, you didn't recognize me. If you did, you would recognize me as the guy with the Oilers. So I was like, well,
yeah,
let's see how
yeah.
this goes. People were fantastic. They throw a few jabs and make some fun and all that, but nothing past a fun part of the rivalry. Never
Exactly.
anything where, oh my God, these guys are maybe they're going to come after me, or I'm not sure how.
Everybody made it home the same way they got there.
That's right. You know what? I was very impressed by both fan bases because you just never know. Nowadays in sports, sometimes you wear a jersey in the wrong place at the wrong time, or at least
Oh,
that's what
yep, yep. Sorry to cut you off, but just before I forget, there was a fan that came to Edmonton. I think it was Brew House right in front of McEwen. He was wearing a Calgary Stampede jersey when it was Battle of Alberta going on. He did not leave that brew house the same way he came in, and I'm not talking in a way like. I don't think it got physical, but there was some back and forth going on. But you know how it is when alcohol gets involved, and
Oh, I know, and going to a sporting event. So one place you should go and be safe. You cheer for your team, I'll cheer for mine. Then some liquid courage can sometimes get involved, and we all have different personalities, and some are a little more maybe aggressive, and you throw in the scenario and the situation, and one word leads to another and leads
Yeah,
to
yeah,
something else, right? It really is, and that's why I was so thankful that both cities and both fan bases, because both have fans literally all over the world, were wonderful. They carried themselves fantastic. And I guess, in some ways, because the Oilers won the series 4-1, the Flames fans had more potential anger because they didn't win as much as Edmonton. But I thought that the fans for the two organizations, the Battle of Alberta took place on the ice, and for the most part, that's where it stayed.
yeah. I remember that night. That's a night you cannot forget. Um, I'm pretty sure when we won that, the city was wild. I live on the north side of the city and I can hear downtown from where I am, which was the craziest thing. But it's like, even though it kept me up, it was a good thing because I know that the city won. We lost like going on, but Battle of Alberta was a win that we deserved, that we waited long time for.
Yeah, I agree. And it was amazing. One of the things that I think I didn't know growing up is how many, and I don't know what it was like in the 80s and 90s, but certainly into the 90s and 2000s and now into the 2020s, it's amazing how many fans travel. And some live in, I'm going to say San Jose or Anaheim. Like when Edmonton played Anaheim in 2017 in the playoffs, oh my gosh, like it was almost like a home game. How many Oilers fans either were displaced or moved to California, or said, "Hey, I'm hopping on a plane and I'm going to California. Maybe I'm going to go to Disneyland, but I'm definitely going to the hockey game." And I love that. People, I've always been impressed. I have a lot of respect for fans because they spend their hard-earned money to travel, to buy tickets, to buy concessionary items. I mean, that's the ultimate, putting your money where your mouth is
Yeah.
and following a team. And I'm always impressed by that. And listen, some people they don't have the money. It doesn't mean that someone sitting at home isn't as good a fan as someone sitting in the stands. They may not have that opportunity, but I just love it because, and I'm biased, but sports does something that nothing else does. Actually, I think it was Daryl Sutter said, in this province, sports brings people together and apart, and religion, and work ethic. And so I love that series. It was long overdue, and I'm happy to cover another one these playoffs.
Oh yeah, no, that's nice, and I can't now, especially talking to you, I can't wait to. Hopefully we get into something like that soon again, and I could just see you on TV and say, "Hey, I talked to this guy before." Another thing that I saw that I saw that you was doing that kind of threw me off was the pickle juice thing and smelling salt, and the salt smelling. What was going on?
Yeah, well, first of all, good for you for doing your research. I think
Of
sometimes
course.
people ask what's what's important for doing an interview, and research and
Thank you.
knowing what you're talking about when it comes to who you're talking to. And so, well done
Thank you.
on that part. Yeah, I mean, I'm always, I always feel like this that I'm just a fan who happens to have a microphone, a light, and a camera, and a player beside me, or a rink in the back of me. And so I always, when I'm at a rink in a dressing room, I'm doing my job. I always feel like I'm the person that takes the player, in the middle is me, and there's the fan. And so you try and link the three of us together so that the player is answering questions that the person sitting at home or in the stands wants to know. Or I'm telling them something that maybe they've seen on TV and go, geez, why are they drinking pickle juice? Or, wow, using salts. And I like to have fun. I like to try different things. And some of them are, a little bit wacky. And listen, it's like being a bit of a comic, right? Some stuff works, not
Yeah.
everything. Some doesn't. Some just doesn't quite like you think. It's funny sometimes something that you think this is going to be great, and after you go, oh man, that sucked. And then sometimes you do something you think, oh, this will be okay, and you go, wow, that turned out great.
Yeah.
That's kind of what life is all about. You prepare for failure, but you also prepare to succeed, which failure helps you do. So that I always feel like what can I tell somebody at home that isn't about goals, assists, power play percentage, how many wins, how many losses a team has, the goals against average? Try and get behind the players to explain what it is that they do. For me, it's one of the most gratifying things is telling people about the people that they watch something that they don't know.
Yeah. Just educating them. No, I like that.
Yeah,
Um,
well said.
this is gonna be an obvious question. I don't know why I'm asking, but why not? What is your favorite team?
Well, okay, just to flesh it out a bit. When I was a kid, I liked the Philadelphia Flyers.
Okay.
This is before the Oilers were playing in the WHA. That's pre 1979 when they joined the NHL, and so the Oilers were my favorite World Hockey Association team. But my favorite NHL team was Philadelphia. Then the Oilers came into the league, and I kind of I started to kind of migrate over to Edmonton. So for sure, Edmonton is my favorite team. I think one of the things that's changed over the years is, I use Calgary as an example, right? I'm not going to apply for a job in Calgary, but you meet players and you go, these are good people.
Yeah.
Or you meet coaches, or you meet public relations staff and you go, oh, they're really nice and they're helpful. So I think what happens is you always have your team. You always have your team, but you start to cheer for people as well, individual people that that have helped you out, that you've watched, that you've interviewed, and you go, wow, that guy, he's great. How can you not cheer for somebody? And I always feel like when I'm doing my job, especially interviewing players, it's my pleasure and my privilege that someone will come over and talk to me. So I want to make sure that when that person is done, he doesn't go, I'm not doing that again. I hope he goes, well, I would do that again. You seem
Yeah.
like a decent guy. So that's it's about relationships, building them, and then adding to them when it comes to the kind of job that I have.
Mm. And another thing I noticed while talking to you is you remember these years like crazy. Like, oh, when the Oilers won, when they lost, and if I it seems as though it's at a point where if I gave you a random year, you could probably tell me who won the Stanley Cup that year. Is it at that point? And as a sport journalist, is that something you need to know, especially with whatever sport you're talking about?
Yeah, I think I'll tell you what. The worst thing, it feels like you died a thousand deaths when you ask somebody a question and you get it wrong. You
Wow.
know, what's it like to score 20 goals for a third time? And the guy goes, actually, I've only scored it once. You just go, oh, like it's like a balloon, boom. Like you're just kind of like, oh my gosh, I feel so not very smart. So you want to be up on your stats. One of the ways to work around that is not mentioning as many stats. Listen, there's guys and gals that know more than I do. Thanks to the internet, you can Google and say, geez, I think his highest goals were 39, and you check and go, oh yeah, or oh no, actually he had 41 one season. So some of it is just you just are around it and you just kind of soak it up and it stays somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Some you look at, you want to kind of practice and learn and remember. But for sure, I think what I would say is if you make too many mistakes, your credibility starts to really
Oh yeah.
suffer.
Yeah.
And you're doing a broadcast and let's say you make five statistical errors. You know what the guy and gal at home is saying, I know more about it than he does. What's he doing? I could do this better than he is. So, and maybe they're not that wrong. So it's important to know what you're talking about
Exactly.
and be able to articulate that to people so that they know you're right, and whomever you're talking to or whomever you're talking about, that you get it right as well. And listen, with social media, sometimes you'll do a story and you think, oh, that was great. I think I got it. And then someone will go, hey, by the way, you said this and it's actually this. And you're going, oh my gosh. So like anyone, doesn't matter how old you get, you continue to learn from your mistakes.
Oh yeah. Because as I'm listening to you speak, it sounds like you know these stats better than you would know your own birthday.
Well, funny you mention that. My wife would often say that. I would rattle off some stats. She goes, "You don't even know when the kids are born, and you don't know when we first met, and you don't know our anniversary." And I'd be like, "Well, You know what? I can get away with not knowing that, but I can't get away with not knowing how many goals Ryan Smith scored in his career high year, which was 39 in 1995-96, right? That's, some things that you just kind of, you need to know, and you just kind of know. And I do know when my kids were born, by the way. And I remember when we were married. So just some stats. I mean, people are, especially nowadays, stats have taken on even a larger following with people when it comes to different analytics and numbers. So you gotta kind of continue to evolve.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you get left behind.
And I love hearing you speak about what it is what you do, because just you speaking and the facial expression you're making, I could just tell this is something you're willing to die behind. And like, of course, doing what you're doing, it has to be to that point, or else, like you said, a lot of people wouldn't take you as serious. People will only
Oh
take
yeah,
you as serious as you take yourself.
listen, just a quick example. We the Oilers had a dad's trip earlier this season, and I put it in my mind that I wanted to introduce each father by his first name, and that wasn't just the players, that was any of the coaches and any of the staff. So I would say there were about 33 or 34 dads on the trip. And some were brothers, some were mentors. So for about 2 days, I was practicing. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Some I knew, some I didn't. And then it's showtime. And I thought to myself, I go, you know what? There's 34 of them. I could get 33 right. But guess what? If I get one wrong, what do you think people are going to be talking about? The one I got wrong.
Oh yeah.
So thankfully, I was able to get them all right. But it's just that's what happens. You can say 10 things correctly, say one wrong, and usually that's just the one that sort of sticks in people's minds. But I work with guys who are, Louis DeBrusque and Jack Michaels and Bob Stauffer and Cam Moon and different people that I work with at Sportsnet, Kelly Rudy, Elliot Friedman, Ron McLean, geez, Keith Yandel, Anson Carter, oh my gosh, David Amber. Anyways, tons of people. And listen, they all know their stuff. It may be varied. We may have different strengths and different weaknesses, but everybody knows what they're talking about because that's what we do. We talk.
Wow, no, that's good. So when you're not working, what else do you do? Because you can't be hockey 24/7.
Buddy, great question. I coach my daughter's soccer team, so I like to try and stay fit. So I'm into when I say working out, I'm not talking about bench pressing, 4 plates 10 times.
You're not a bodybuilder.
No, no, those days are long gone, my friend.
Yeah.
I want this body to stay somewhere reasonable to how it looks. So I like to stay fit and work out, keep in shape. Last summer, I ran a half marathon.
Wow.
This summer, knock on wood, I'm going to try and run a full marathon. It's always something that I kind of had on my checklist. I'm a soccer player sort of by nature, so I did running. I refereed soccer and ran, but not like that. It would be within a game. I would run 4 or 5 miles for training, do some sprints. It was nothing like running a half marathon, and certainly nothing like running a full marathon. But I'm inspired by other people who've run it. And I see people, and you think that someone has to run a marathon, they have to be 162 and a quarter pounds and run 74 miles a week. And no, you don't have to be that. All shapes and sizes, all kinds of different training regimens and schedules. And I thought to myself, that's something I'd like to do. Now, the thing I'm really passionate about is soccer,
Yeah.
and I played my whole life and refereed, and now I coach my daughter's team. And she'll often say, Dad, you take this too serious. I'm like, I know, I can't help myself. I can't help it. I like to win. I know it's about having fun. I like to win.
You're a
So
winner.
sometimes, absolutely, I joke. I say to the girls, I go, I have the privilege of being around a professional sports team and professional sports leagues. And I go, I know we're not a professional team, but that doesn't mean we can't act like
Oh
professionals.
yeah.
When it comes to training, when it comes to attitude, when it comes to preparation, when it comes to games, yeah, it's only 1 or 2 days a week. It's not 7 days a week, and it's not every hour of every day. But for those 2 hours or 3 hours or an hour and a half, you're like, you're mine.
Oh yeah.
You're the sport. So I really do take it seriously. After a loss, I toss and turn, and I'd love the coaches who do it for a living because I'm just like, I don't know how they do it. I toss and turn and think, what could I have done differently? Why did we miss, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And then, wake up the next day and then the next day after you're going, okay, let's get on to the next game. So I really love that. And I love, I've played and refereed sports of various types. I don't know if there's anything more fulfilling, and maybe it's because of the age I am. I'm not sure I would have thought this at 25 compared to 55, but I love the idea of putting something together, a game plan, and having it executed properly, effectively. And I also love dealing with young people and molding them and trying to help them. And it's not just about the field or the rink or the baseball diamond. I try and teach some lessons that apply to sports, but apply to life
Yeah.
so that 5, 10, 20 years from now, just like I have coaches that I look back on and go, wow, that guy made a difference in my life. And I hope that somewhere down the line, they remember something or they see me and go, yeah, I remember that coach. He was actually a pretty good coach. He really cared about us and he wanted us to do well. And, I'm not sure that some kids, they just want to play, right?
Yeah.
They're young adults. But it's like they say, if you can help make one person's life a bit better, a bit more prosperous, a bit more successful, a bit more satisfying, then I'll never stop trying.
Oh, your mentality is somewhat like mine. It's like, don't don't be with me if you're not gonna take it serious. Like example, right before we started the podcast, I showed you what my basement looks like, and me, even though I haven't made it, I treat it like I have. I treat it like it's Joe Rogan. That's like
Yeah.
that's how for me. That's how you have to take these type of things, cause or else what's the point of doing it? And I'm just like you too. When I lose in a game that I'm really trying to win, I feel like I just got crucified. Like I just cannot handle the loss. I can't handle it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I often, you use different lines at different times, but I always try and say when we're in really important games that mean a lot in the standings, or we have a chance to win our division. I say, hey, do you want to be good today, or do you want to be great?
Yeah.
What do you want?
No.
Because you can be great. It's up to you. It's not up to me. It's up to you. And
Exactly.
I think one of the things that's happened that, first of all, mental health has become increasingly important over the
Oh yeah.
last, well, X amount of years, certainly through the pandemic. But I think the mental preparation, I think when we watch Connor McDavid fly up and down the ice, we think, wow, I wish I could skate like that. Not everybody can, but don't think that Connor isn't a heck of a hard-working guy, that he isn't extremely competitive. Yes, he's been given God-given talents, but he engages physically, mentally, and emotionally.
Yeah.
He could probably float around without all that and still be a great player. But this guy, he wants to score 50 goals. He's going to score 50 goals. He wants to be better at faceoffs. He's better at faceoffs. On first, off last. Hey, I find that when you're on a team where your most talented players are your most hardworking, half the job for the coach is done.
Yeah.
Because who's going to stand around and not work as hard as the best player on the team when you're not the best player on the team? Leadership, I love it. I love it. And I love to make a difference in people's lives, whether it's through TV or when I'm not on TV, through coaching.
Through coaching face to face. I love that. I have a few more questions to ask you because I know you're on a tight schedule. One thing I want to ask you, because back to the soccer question. Is it soccer or is it football?
Well, you know what? It's funny because I'm Italian, and so football. You watch the Premier League, and it's football in England, and in Italian it's calcio, which is
Mm,
certainly not customary compared to soccer or football. So I use both. We
yeah.
watch a lot of German soccer because of our local boy. Playing for Bayern Munich, Alfonso Davies. My wife is
Oh,
German, so
Alfonso.
you
Yeah.
can imagine when Germany plays Italy in soccer, it's a rough household. As my wife says to me, "You're not only a sore loser, you're a sore winner." And I go, "Sorry, I can't help myself." So yeah, football, soccer, calcio. I'll take anything. I'll say this. I love hockey. I love hockey. I played hockey growing up till I was about 16. I was I would say below average, okay, decent, never a star. If there were 13 forwards, I was 12 or 13. If there were seven defensemen, I was six or seven at lower levels, no problem. But when I drive by, especially in the summer, and I drive by a soccer field, that's my field of dreams.
Oh wow.
That's where one day I thought I'd be wearing the Italy jersey because back then, growing up with the Italian heritage, even though I grew up and was born and raised in Canada. We grew up Italian, even though we were living in Canada. But the idea of playing on a soccer pitch, on a field, when I drive by and I look at that grass, whatever my heart rate is, it just simmers right down. I am so relaxed, and I
It's
just look
therapeutic
at
for
it
you.
myself. I just see myself as a kid kicking that ball over and over again and trying trick shots and taking shots on net and dribbling through cones and juggling. And it's like a peaceful place for me. It really is the most peaceful place probably on earth when I'm either on a soccer field or driving by one.
It's nice that you say that because when I was doing some stalking on your page, I went all the way down and I saw the Italian football or soccer jersey. I saw that on your page, and that's when I like right then and there I started to do more research, and I'm like, Gene Principe, is he Italian? Because I thought because the name Gene it was French.
Yeah, well, you know what? Here, we'll tell you a little story. If I could redo this, I probably would. When I was sort of breaking in to television, I remember working with a guy named Joe Pascucci, and they wanted him to change his name to Joe Michaels, which was a little more anglicized, a
Yeah.
little less ethnic. And so when I was named after my nono, my grandfather, and my full name. So if I'm in Italy and someone says, Come te chiami? They say, What's your name? I say, Eugenio Principe. I don't say
Wow.
Gene Principe. But you come over and things, it's like so many of the players that come over from Europe, and you'll say, How do you pronounce your name? And you'll say, and they'll go, Yeah, that's fine. And you're like, No, 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 no. How do you pronounce your name? Like if someone is asking you your name, and so many of them will say, Well, if I was back in Finland, I'd say it this way, but I'm here,
Yeah.
I say
Yeah.
it this way. So I'm a little bit of that. If I could go back, I'm so proud of my heritage. And don't get me wrong, I'm extremely proud to be Canadian. Like Canada has given me, my family, both individually and extended, a wonderful life. I'm not sure I would have had this kind of life back home. My dad used to always say, you could have called the soccer games back in Italy if you were there. No hockey. You call all the soccer games. And I said, who knows, what could have, what should have, what would have happened. But I'm more than happy to be where I am. Living in Edmonton, it's a wonderful, wonderful city, and soccer just is something that it's in my blood. To quote a Shawn Mendes song, because my daughter's a big Shawn Mendes fan. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just in my blood. It always has been, and somewhere in there you'll find all kinds of sports.
Oh yeah. So this will be my very last thing. Well, little thing I like to add on. Hearing you say your name made me feel like I was watching The Sopranos or something. I could hear the Italian. I could hear the accent.
Oh yeah, yeah, and so you're bang on, and it always disappoints me, not in the person like you. It disappoints me in me because I'm the one that's given this out, and so I'm so happy, particularly around the Oilers. A few of them will call me Gino, and I feel like just
Gino.
that change, just that one letter change, kind of gives you a little bit of the Italiano. Hey, what's the matter for you?
Ah,
So. I love it, but I love it, and it's kind of neat. And it's also, listen, I'm 55, but I'm like a kid. If
yeah.
someone plays in the NHL says, "Hey, thanks, Gino," I'm like, "Hey, he called me Gino." Like, oh, so this is cool, right? So I love it. Doesn't matter how old you get, you still got that little kid inside of you.
Oh yeah. And my thing, the last thing I want to ask you is it was crazy when I first saw you. This is off topic by the way. When I first saw you, I was working. I don't know if speaking on this will come back and bite me in the behind later on, but when I first saw you, I was working at Rogers. I work as a XA security. I do XA
Oh,
security. Yeah, and there was a guy walking out of the spot that I was securing. He's like, "Oh, he's talking to his girlfriend." I think it was Edmonton versus versus Seattle Kraken. I think just
yeah.
the most recent game here, and he's running out like a little kid. He's running out. That's Gene Principe. That's Gene Principe. I'm like, where? And, he comes out. I think you was just making your way out to the hotel that's connected to Rogers.
Yeah,
Yeah, and he
yeah.
came up to you and he got you to take a picture, and I'm like, wow, what are the chances? And I was speaking to the lady that was with me securing. I said, what are the chances that I get him on a podcast? And she's very optimistic, which I thank God for because I did not think about I didn't want to do it. I'm like, whatever, let's see what happens. I did it,
Yeah,
and here we are today.
buddy. It's
Yeah,
a great story, and that you're giving out life lessons right there, right? How many people have double clutched on things and sat and wondered if only I had. Listen, I met my wife. She shut me down first time quickly. She's like, no chance. See
Yeah,
ya.
yeah.
So later I met her again, reminded her she didn't remember me. We chatted, and she's like, okay, yeah, let's go out. And, here we are, 25 and a half years of marriage and about 29 years, 30 years together,
Wow.
coming up. Then, yeah, you got to go for it. You got to go for
You
it. I
have
always
to.
felt like the worst I could say is no, no.
Exactly.
Okay, you tried.
I don't remember what the spot was called, but it's like the entrance that you use to go to that hotel and then that bar. That I don't remember what it's called. But yeah, it was I also spoke to Tony Brar. I can never say the last name right. Tony Brar. And then I thought about DMing you right then and there. But yeah, my very, very last question. To any advice to people that are trying to get to your type of platform, that are trying to get on TV, sports nets, sport journalists, what'd be your advice?
Well, one thing that I find is really neat nowadays is that, when I was sort of growing up and growing into my career, it was pretty straightforward. You wrote articles for a
Yeah.
paper, you're on radio or you're on TV. And that was it. One, two, three. Those were kind of your options. You didn't really have any other options. And now, vlogging and blogging and podcasts, and there's so many different opportunities.
Yeah.
I think follow your dreams is the easiest thing to say. One of the things, it's an old cliche, but you got two ears and one mouth, right? So do more listening than talking,
Mm.
because you definitely learn a lot when you listen. And I love listening to people and hearing their stories because everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a story, and that I find is fascinating. And then some of the things that you might hear from your parents or your siblings, right? Work hard, be a good person, make sure you're focused, make sure that you are career driven, and find what it is that makes you happy. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, when you're on your deathbed, I'm telling you, nobody cares how much money you have, how many houses you own, what kind of cars you drive. You have your memories. You have your memories that you take with you and that you continue to have of people. So you want to make sure they're good ones. So that's what I would say when it comes to some advice for those trying to break into broadcasting. And make sure you make more friends than enemies. I can tell you that
Oh
too.
yeah. Well, that's basically all I got to ask you. Is there anything you'd like to ask me before we wrap this all up?
You know what? I've had a great time chatting with you. When I do my job, I'm usually in spurts, a minute and a half, 45 seconds, and we've had a nice long chat. It's been a real privilege for me to have an opportunity to talk to you about so many things, not just about the broadcaster, but about the person. And so
Exactly.
thanks for giving me the opportunity.
No problem. Hopefully one day, if all is well, I'd love to have you face to face. Because if it's one thing I want to do, I want to start getting into interviews where I'm wearing a suit, where I'm wearing a tuxedo, a $500-600 suit. That's what I want to do. But it's just I don't want to do that with just anybody.
Yeah,
So
I'm with you. Let's see if we can get it done sometime.
oh yeah, and I again, I appreciate you. Have no idea what this means to me. Like this is a milestone for me. You have no idea. But all in
Uh,
all, I'm happy that you came on. I'm happy that we worked out a time, and hopefully, you know, what I'm saying, hopefully again we could do this again.
Absolutely. I'm honored that it means that much to you for us to have a chance to chat.
Oh yeah. Well, this is the part where I say it's your boy Convo Mar, and then you say who you are. It's your boy Convo with Marlo,
Gene Principe.
and I'm out.